Welcome, everyone. So we have a diverse panel today from a few different backgrounds. You guys can stand, sit, whatever makes you feel comfortable. I know they were a little worried about the high tops here. So as my introduction, my day job is at Cuyahoga County Board of DDs, so I've got some government experience in navigating some of those issues, and we have some of the freedom to do the flexible and hybrid work. But I'm really excited to talk to a few different people here that maybe don't have that opportunity. So we've got Tony here from Planet Fitness, Cindy from Heinen's, and Jackie from the Cleveland Clinic. So I think we've got a diverse background in some of those opportunities, and we're really going to get into, I think, mostly about talent today. Seems to be the pressing issue, and some other things along supporting talent. And we may broach on DE&I. That's a hot button topic right now, and is more challenging than ever to navigate because there's a little bit of pushback on the national level on some of those conversations. So I think it's always good to talk about it, how you can talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion and not make people feel like they're left out. So it is applicable in the talent strategy, and I think from Cleveland in particular, that if you're a local business in Northeast Ohio, we have diverse people that live in this area. So if you're gonna try and fill your positions, there needs to be that outreach into that. And it doesn't become something of a social or justice cause, it becomes a business case, right? Like we have to kind of do that. So I think we'll kind of get into some of those things. Feel free to jump in with questions. We'll kind of move through some different topics, but we don't want to just save questions to the end because we may move past something that was relevant to you. So if you have a question, just raise your hand and ask any of the panel. Feel good about that? All right, now we're talking. Jackie, you sat next to me, so you're going to get the first question. So,
I'm really bad about using a microphone. Never in my life has this mouth ever required a microphone. So if I don't, please excuse me.
Yeah, well, we'll keep you on top of that. So when we got the Cleveland Clinic, how many employees are you up to now?
Oh, almost 90,000 system-wide.
It's like a small city right there. So I would imagine talent acquisition and recruitment is a core principle. What are some things the Cleveland Clinic is doing to fill some of the 100,000 plus roles that you have there? What are some strategies you guys are using?
Sure. So I will speak more so along the lines of a regional level because I do support South Point and Euclid hospitals. So we really try as community hospitals to get out in the communities. We go to all the schools. We are at any career events. Anything creative you can possibly think of. I don't think there's anything we haven't kept untouched.
And when you talk about like trying to be out there, is that specific positions? Is everyone required to get out and make community connections, community partnerships? We hear a lot about like that active outreach, right? We want to find people, we want to make ourselves known. How does the Cleveland Clinic do that from a personnel perspective, getting people out into the community?
Sure. So, with our professional staff, such as nursing, respiratory therapy, x-ray, we are so partnered with the schools. We have tendencies to build a good pool of candidates from that. The students are in the hospitals, so they can decide if they are a good fit for us. And if they apply, we already know them. So that piece of the puzzle is wonderfully easy for us. I say easy in quotes, but the other positions, such as entry-level positions, we do have to be a little bit more creative with. I know our recruitment and talent acquisition department, they do cold calls. They search websites for people looking for positions. The managers themselves go out into job markets and career fairs and all that, just trying to get a good pool of people.
I think it's that proactive strategy necessarily than reactive. So Cindy, I know you've got a lot of locations all over the place. What are some strategies you're using to proactively build pipelines and tap into some of those different organizations, districts, things like that?
Mm-hmm. I think one of the things that is different at Heinen's and maybe other places I've been is that we have lots of different types of workers. And so when we're looking for talent acquisition opportunities, we might be looking for our food production plant. We might be looking for, where we're cutting raw meat, right, and making some of the prepared foods that you see when you shop. We're looking for warehouse workers. We're looking for CDL truck drivers. We're looking for all the people that you see in the stores. And then there's the corporate office with sort of all the back of the house functions you would think. So it really varies. We love to promote from within. And I don't just say that, it's legitimate. We've absolutely promoted people where there was a better outside candidate, but we felt that we wanted to give the internal person the opportunity. And so that entry level recruiting is huge for us because we feel like we're building legacy associates. And we do lots of different things. We spend a good amount of time working with local high schools. There's lots of high school students working in our stores. We work with culinary schools. A lot of the people that you see working in our stores in some of the food departments are culinary school graduates or chefs. And so we do a lot of work with culinary schools in various parts of the country. We have almost 5 stores in Illinois now. We've got really great partnerships out there with culinary schools. We're obviously doing college recruiting for corporate positions. Not as many corporate entry-level positions just because it's a small corporate office. But from a food perspective, we are, in the CDLs, those are hard to find. I don't know if anyone else ever engages with that, but that's become increasingly harder to find. So anyway, it's lots of different methods. We partner with schools for disabled students to bring students with disabilities in. We will partner with some job programs. We've done a lot of work with El Barrio, for example, in the past, and things like that. So it's really casting a wide net.
Do you have anybody specifically in the organization in charge of that, or is that something that everybody kind of takes a hand in? How do you break up those responsibilities? Because it's a lot of effort to do that outreach and try to show up to events and meetings and things along those lines.
No, that's a great question. So each store or warehouse or food plant all has a leader, right? We call them directors, and they're responsible for the hiring at their location and what happens. Our HR team, what we do is we support. So we do things that are going to cover the whole company, like how we're going out to market with our brand. And we will tee up a lot of school relationships. But sometimes they come to us from the store manager. Hey, this person came in today and told me about this great program that they're doing at the local high school, and I think I want to do it. Can you help me? So it's a little bit centralized with my team, but it's also decentralized with the management team.
So a good mix, yeah. I think it's always helpful to have somebody coordinate that, but it's always nice to send the people that are doing the job to those fairs to talk about it. Sometimes we'll send our HR team to a job fair and someone will go oh, what's a SA position? And be like, well, and they describe it like it's much better to have the SA there, or the person this is what I do on a daily basis. So
right.
It's nice to do that mix.
We never just send HR to a job fair. We might have an HR person who's coordinated it all and is there and helping, but we always have, a substantive expert there. Candidates don't want to talk to HR really, right? They want to talk to someone who's doing the job.
Get the bad rap, people are, we're nice.
They want to talk to us when they get hired and after.
Yeah. So very cool. So we got 90,000 employees, 3,500. Tony from Planet Fitness, national thing, but more of a franchise base. How many employees are in your network?
So for the we operate the east side of Cleveland, so I have 10 locations, and between those 10 locations, we're roughly around 130 employees. So a little different scale.
It creates challenges different than other ones. So what are your challenges in filling some of those positions? Because one of your guys are open 24/7, right? So you have
Yes, we're 24/7 at all our facilities. So we run 3 main shifts, but very similar to what they're doing as far as acquiring talent. We're out in the community as well. We're at job fairs. We also like to focus on the external member, if you will. So we get roughly 700 to 1,000 people that walk through each club every day. So we'll market to them for positions. Word of mouth seems to help us a lot.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point, and attached to the customer base, because they know who you are and what you are. What do you have their emails, or how do you kind of work?
Yeah, I mean they know the business better than us. You know, they're in it every day. They see the trends. They see what needs to be done to the facility. Simply, we post jobs. We'll have a table strictly saying now hiring with applications or applications physically, pieces of paper that they can fill out. And I know it's a digital world, but we still go old school a little bit.
Make it simple and capture them while they're there. Go ahead. Do you, I was going to ask if you see any of that, like trying to tap into the customers that you see coming in all the time and like, hey, you come here a lot. Do you want an apron, right? Or something like that?
We definitely do that. We hire customers. We also hire their children. And we'll put hiring cards or notices at the cash registers. We'll stuff them in bags, so when you get home and unpack your groceries, there's a notice in there that we're hiring. But the other thing I was going to mention that he made me think of is we also have a referral program for our associates. So they have the opportunity to earn up to $600 for every referral who stays for a certain period of time, which actually we feel our associates are the best source of talent, new talent, and that really works well for us.
Yeah, there's some really good data. If you can Google Silk Road data. So it's a lot about hiring, and there's some stats of like, I think from employee referral or like a trusted source is only 12 or 15% of candidates, but it ends up being 60 or 70% of hires. So people invest a lot of time in posting on Indeed and those type of different, and they'll get a lot of applicants, but it doesn't end up turning into a lot of hires. So that research of trying to invest in your employees and keeping them happy and so that they refer people to you or creating those trusted partnerships. So Chris and my team at Cuyahoga DD is out there trying to make relationships with businesses. Tony and I, we go golfing, we drink some beers here and there. So he trusts me a little bit so that I can make him some referrals that tend to work out at a higher percentage than if he's just posting on Indeed. So I think that like personal relationship as everything still goes like digital, like just knowing some people, being able to call some people up still tends to be the best or at least most efficient way of finding those good applicants. And Tony, I'm going to come back down this aisle because we have three people here that I probably just based on your business, that flexible hybrid work, which is very attractive for talent, is probably challenging for you to offer. So what in the parameters of it's a gym, you got to be here. How do you try to offer some flexibility because you're competing with maybe remote hybrid jobs, or we talked about gig work like Uber, Lyft, that they can work wherever. So what are some things you're trying to offer your employees that give them some more autonomy or flexibility for the job? Basically
that, if the flexibility of schedule, I'm real big on stressing to my club managers is quality of life with all the employees. And, if there's games that they need to attend for their kids or doctor's appointments, just making sure that we have that flexibility to adjust their schedule and also make up hours if that income is what is needed as well. So just having that flexibility in schedule, even for 24 hours, we can find them hours if that shift doesn't work. Yeah, and I'll give Tony another plug. Even that flexibility in like amount of hours, we were just talking about a young man that we worked together 10 years ago. He's probably the longest standing Planet Fitness employee there, has a disability with some stamina issues, and that one of the flexibilities was just like he worked 2 days a week, and then as he was like needing some more breaks, he started to work 1 day. So even like that ability of, we've worked with some employers in the past that full-time jobs only, but they're really hard to fill. And then like, okay, but why? Like, why does it need to be full-time? We hear this from a lot of manufacturers, like the machine won't know if somebody different comes back from lunch to push the buttons, right? So some of that flexibility and like how you let people kind of pick a range of hours and opportunities. Yeah, absolutely. It's not just 9 to 5. There's swing shifts in between, like you said, 4 hours here, even 2 hours there. If it's just to cover a shift for someone to come in, is where we're flexible in that regard as well. Because Jackie, we were even talking like, 312s can be a flexible. Do you offer like the different shifts for people to pick depending on the position to try to find something that works for them? 312s would be good for me.
I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
I couldn't do it. I always say a lot of our nursing staff on the floors, they work 3 12-hour shifts. A lot of times, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, right, in a row. I have yet to figure out how they do that, because I would be about done for by the end of by Thursday comes. I think I would need to sleep all day Thursday, but it works for some people's lives. If you have children, we have weekender programs as well. So if they don't have children, we have people that just specifically come in and work on the weekends. So we offer 312s, 410s, and anything in between pretty much, and there's never shortage hours. We're 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So we always need people there. So, but, we have a lot of 8 to 5 positions or 7 to 3:30 positions, part-time, full-time, PRN. It's pretty much a basket of fun, we'll call it.
I'm going to curveball, because you just brought up parents. And I had to drop my kid off at daycare today. Matt's a daycare dropper offer, and my wife gets to be the hero and pick him up, and I got to drop him off crying all the time. But Cleveland Clinic, with its size and flexibility, have you guys looked into any opportunities to support new parents with daycare, whether it's on site? I know that's been a hot topic. It's one of probably the biggest barriers to a lot of people accessing the workforce is two parents have to work a lot now, but it's like daycare is $1,000 a month for 3 days a week. It's ridiculous. So I know some companies have been trying to talk about strategies to do that on site if they're large enough, or even creating like some co-ops where 4 or 5 businesses in a park try to find one employer to host, and then they open that location up to like people in that kind of office park. So I didn't know if that's something like a Cleveland Clinic scale. Do you do anything for childcare?
Not that I'm aware of. I believe that there might be something at main campus, but I know at the regional hospital level there is not. However, with that being said, speaking of flexible scheduling, a lot of times, sometimes our caregivers, they're upfront and transparent. Hey, is there any way I can work from 8:30 till 3:30 just because I have to pick up my children? Others, it becomes to the point of an attendance issue. You pull them into the office and say, what can I help with? Why can't you get here till 8:30? You're always 15 minutes late. So if they say, well, I have to drop my kid off at daycare, and sometimes the line's long or whatever the case may be, we do have the ability to say, hey, would 9 o'clock work better for you? And it solves that problem instantly every time.
Yeah, and I think it's unique to every business. So my organization is pretty flexible, and they have like a requirement for in-office hours, but it's really, an hour limit. It's not a days. So it was discussion of like, we want 3 days a week. Well, what if I work 2 long days in the office, or some weeks I'm in 5 days for 3 or 4 hours, right? So it's more of like an hour thing that we're just trying to get in. And the question of, what do you want? Do you want collaboration to bring people into the office? Like, trying to, again, be flexible. We want people in the office, but how can we be as flexible as possible? A little bit different on your guys' scale, but I think having those conversations with employees that are good employees and like what works for you, and helpful. So Cindy, any comments on just like, how you try to be accommodating and support people that have busy lives?
Yeah, this has been a really big push for Heinen's really since COVID. I think, as we all know, the workforce has changed. We were talking about that earlier. And it's not exciting to go work in a grocery store and work in person with the public, maybe as much as it once was. And so we've really had to look at how we do things. For a corporate office, we do offer 2 days a week. You can work from home if you choose. So that's, one scenario. In our warehouses and our food plant and all of our stores, we've moved to a lot of 4-day, 10-hour shift schedules, which our associates really love. It works a lot better for a lot of them. We even have managers doing that. In retail, managers are known to work lots of hours. Well, at Heinen's, we don't want you to work all those hours. We want you to have work-life balance. We always have. And so our store managers, typically we're working 45 hours a week, which is already drastically reduced from a typical retail grocery manager. But we had recently changed that to 40. And we said, we just want you to work a regular work week like everybody else. Some people keep staying and working longer, but we prefer that they don't. So that's another thing that we've done. A lot of individualized schedules. We do have union contracts that we have to, deal with, and there are scheduling requirements and some seniority requirements, but we've really been able to partner with the unions, to help them understand, like, we want to give our associates what they want, right? We don't want to be constrained all the time, not being able to give someone the schedule they need because, the contract might say so. So we've done a lot of work in that space also. And we have a lot of schedules that are unique, right? I can't drop off till 8 o'clock. I have to pick up at 4 o'clock. And so, they are hourly workers. There's an impact sometimes to that, but we're able to have longer shifts on other days. Like, I'm thinking about a specific department manager who works, I'm pretty sure it's a 12-hour day on one day of the week, because they have childcare, and the rest of the week they have limited childcare. So then the other days of the week, this person does work 5 days, but they're shorter those other 4 days to accommodate. So things like that.
That's great. Yeah, and I think like flexibility in that aspect is really helpful. When a newer dad, I got a 2.5-year-old. My clock-in calendar is like off the charts. Like, he used to. I already regret this. He used to wake up at like 8 a.m., which was brilliant. And now he's getting up at 6 a.m. the last week. I don't know why. But so I would work from like 6:30 to 8, and I'd get him up and I'd get him to school, and then 9:30 to 4 right as he comes in. And then he goes down, and I could work 9 to 10. And part of that conversation with the business is always like flexibility for me. But as someone who does customer service, if Cindy emailed me at night, I'm responding at 9 p.m. and I'm responding at 7 a.m. So he's like, Jared's always working, but I'm still only like working 7.5 hours. But it all offered more of like, I'm available a long time, but I'm also like not missing time with my kid. And that becomes something in the world and different here. There's been some research that remote or flexible hybrid work is worth like a 20% premium. And I just know from like my current role, someone would need to offer me almost double what I make to kind of leave some of that opportunity. So it's again, it's not for everybody, but I'm just giving you my perspective of like how valuable that is for me as a parent. And that's super important too. When we talk about, as we float into the DE&I space, there's a lot of pushback on some of these like DE&I policies, because it comes from it's a race, it's a gender thing, but diversity is so much broader than that. It could be, how do we get more parents in here? How do we get different generational diversity? How do we get different thinkers in? And I think the more flexible you can be and the better conversations you have with your workers, they'll tell you, like, if you ask them, right? Like, if you're having the conversations with them. So Tony, I think we were talking to you're bringing in this good talent with Pipeline, keeping them, you're doing huddles with them regularly in those things, asking them how it's going, what you could do a little bit better. Can you talk about those huddles that you do?
Sure. So every store manager, we require them to do what we call the vibe huddle, and that's get to know their employees a little bit closer to maybe understand why they're coming in late or why their work performance has changed, and just to get a better understanding of maybe their home life or their home situation. So yeah, we require vibe huddles once a month to every staff member.
Vibe huddles?
Vibe.
Okay.
Vibe, yeah.
I like that. That's pretty like non-threatening. Like those vibe. So
it's an open discussion. You could talk about anything. We start work performance. This is where we're at. This is where we see you're trending. And then, like I said, sometimes it goes into personal life, about kids, about whatever. It's a very open discussion, though, with that employee and manager.
Yeah, I think one of the buzzwords after COVID, or at least if you haven't, there was that work-life balance conversation, and now it's that idea of work-life integration. You're kind of switching between them frequently, so it's never one and one. The older school thought might have been you leave your home life when you check in the door, and that's not realistic. People do have, things going on at home that weigh on them at work, and you can see that performance. And when you start to try to be from an HR perspective of what can I do to help you, instead of immediately addressing maybe the behaviors, the underlying problem, especially if you have a good staff that you see maybe changing a little bit from there. And Jackie, I think we talked, you do one-on-one meetings with that, or we were talking you're kind of checking in with some of the workers more regularly in some version of a one-on-one check-in type of thing?
Yeah, we are really actually trying to get back to the basics right now. So what we are asking of our managers is to really just have one-on-one conversations with the caregivers. Everybody wants feedback differently, right? I may want to meet with my manager once a week. You may want once a year. You may say, don't talk to me. So we're really getting into the habit of asking each caregiver, what is your expectation from me? Having check-in conversations and then scheduling them once a quarter, once a month, whatever works best for each caregiver.
Yeah, customized approach, like what works for you and how you can do that. So when we talk about, and I really like, Cindy, you talked about like leadership development or like, supporting people and helping them grow is the easiest thing to do. You said something interesting, Heinen's, everybody goes through a leadership development program. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I did want to just pick up real quick, if I could, on one thing you were saying earlier, about this theme of getting to know your associates and talking to them one-on-one and meeting them where they are. I would tell you that today we see more mental health challenges and struggles in the workforce than ever before. And any HR person that I talk to in any business is saying the exact same thing. I think people are really struggling, lots of anxiety and depression. And so I just wanted to follow up on that because that's been something we have been working really hard to have tools to address, assistance programs to address, but also really enabling our managers because they're the ones having those conversations, right? They're the ones that the associate comes into work and says, I'm going to go home and end it all today, right? I'm not there dealing with that. And so I just want to call that out because I think that's a huge focus for HR everywhere right now. So,
and great point, because there is also some research about, in today's society, a lot of things have moved online other than work. Now there's even some work online, but there's just different like groups and things that have like dwindled in participation. So where, people used to go to church and be part of those communities or different organizations or like go out. Most people spend time online and the only time they're in person is at employers. And so a lot of the younger generation is looking to their job to be like that community. And I think they're asking a lot more from that because they don't have community elsewhere. And so maybe as an employer or a business, you're like, why are they like, the second family? Like, I got my own family, but I have to like realize that they may be hungry for that at the organization. And how do you balance some of those things? So, you brought up, what are some things that have worked and to try to help people through those?
I think the focus on enabling managers on what to look for and how to have the conversations has probably been our biggest success. What to notice in people that may be struggling, how to ask if they're okay, if they're not coming and talking to you. We also focus on one-on-ones. We call them meaningful conversations, but we've done a lot of enabling of our managers on how to have a meaningful conversation about work, but also about how you might be doing outside of work. And that's probably been the most successful. Is just that, Heinen's is high touch with our customers. We're even higher touch with our associates. Our values start with literally a sentence that says, it starts with associates who love working at Heinen's. And so that's always our number one priority. And I think that one-on-one approach really, it benefits much more so than, hey, here's the EAP, go check it out. Right.
So I'll come back to you about the leadership thing. I wanted to ask Tony, you've got managers that are like, they're running their building and people out there like, I'm not a therapist. I can't do this. Like, I've got stuff to do. How do you maybe say like, if we don't take care of our employees or like give them this time, it's going to on the back end cost more time because then we got to like recruiting's expensive, hiring takes time. So what is some of the, maybe if there's a manager like, I can't be a babysitter, I can't be a parent. How are you trying to maybe soften them up a little bit to make sure that they're being empathetic and caring, which is maybe a skill lacking in today's society in a lot of areas?
No, you used a great word, empathetic. We have a company core values, and one of our 6 core values is empathy. And so we have to make sure that we are displaying empathy towards, not, like I said, internal and external situations, customers. I always revert back to our core values, and I also have these talks with my club managers, and in return they should be doing the same thing.
And for anyone on the panel, do you think some of like, be careful how I say this, like after COVID, the great resignation, people were able to move and get like really good jobs. And I feel a little bit, just from my perspective, talking to HR, that businesses maybe started to look at employees like, you only use us for a paycheck. You'll leave us in a second. Why would I invest in you? You're going to leave me for $2 more. Like, I feel like businesses felt a little burn that people just kind of left them for a better paycheck. And now maybe starting to realize like it is worth investing in employees. If I do that, they will stay long term. Do you think there was any of that, like when you saw this exodus of people, that you were a little bit, that people started to pull back on that investment in employees at all?
I did not experience that. Well, if anything, we doubled down because we didn't want them to go. We looked at our pay ranges. We pay over and above the union contracts. We took that even higher. We, did all sorts of things to keep them because they're our biggest asset, right? So I know there were I've heard other HR people talk like that, but I did not have that experience.
Well, that's why you're on the panel. You guys are good examples of what not to do, right? Like, I did sense some of that, like, the more time I invest in that. And so there's like always a good meme, and I'll probably butcher it, but like, the thought of like, what if I invest in this worker and they leave? And then the opposite of like, but what if you don't invest in them and they stay, right? Like you're stuck with them. So, I think there still is that. And I'm a millennial, that will kind of leave. And I have a lot of loyalty and investment into my organization. And I think that's a little bit of a myth about the younger generations, that they don't have that. And so then we kind of maybe self-fulfilling prophecy. We don't invest in people and then they leave. And then we're like, see, those millennials, those Gen Zers, they've got, people don't stick around anymore. And so there is always that thought too of like what you can do differently to invest and keep people. So any other thoughts, Jackie, on just like how you're trying to keep people around? And I think Cleveland Clinic, that's probably as well known. You got, a couple competitors in the area, but talk about how you're trying to keep people to stick around.
So again, communicating with them, that's huge, the check-in conversations. And I had this brilliant thought as you were talking, and it completely escaped my mind, but I'll get back to it, don't worry. So really, honestly, we try to focus, so healthcare is a little bit of a different entity. So most people enter healthcare because they have a family member or something impacted them in a healthcare world and they want to give back. I hear that time and time again. It's very easy to lose that focus because day to day it's work, right? So we really try to push with our caregivers to remember their why they're there. And I go as far as saying like, put it on your phone, put it somewhere so it's always there. So if you're having a tough time, because it happens, it's a hospital. Not every day is smelling like roses. Look at your why.
No, I was just going to add, I just remembered in like break rooms throughout my locations, we have something called a vision board and a success ladder. So I understand that Planet Fitness is not everyone's end all be all, but if that's the road you choose, we put in our success ladder how to get to certain positions. How do you get to a fitness instructor? What's the roadmap to get there? What's the roadmap to get to an AM, to a club manager, to a district manager, to a regional manager? So we put those visions there if people want that. So I think knowing what it takes and setting goals for the individual is helpful.
And that's a great discussion. I was at a city club event almost like a year ago, and CEO of a call center was talking about all these different programs they were doing to try to keep talent. And they had like a 2-year window, like people left, and they were doing like furniture and training and all of these awesome programs. And people started leaving like sooner. He was like, I can't understand it. And they just started talking about it. It was an entry-level job, and everything they were doing to prepare people, helping them get high GEDs, helping them to go to school, was like helping them advance. And he just started to look at the idea of like, well, let me think about what I have to offer. And I do have some form of advancement, but maybe someone leaving my organization isn't the end all. A Heinen's could be a high school thing. So like you kind of understanding that of like, I want to maybe help you prepare for the next position. So how do you kind of balance that? Like, we want to invest in individuals, but it is a entry-level job that they may leave, and there's only so many manager positions like that.
specifically around high school students, we feel like we have a responsibility to teach them. A lot of them, it's their first job, right? When a high school student gets hired, I actually send a letter to their parent or guardian and thanking them for letting their child work for us and all the things we hope they learn while they're here. So it's unique. I think when I first got there, they were already doing that, and I was like, really? I'm going to send these letters every month? We hire a lot of people, but I have parents call me all the time after those letters, which is great. Back to the self-leadership on this. So we do send all of our associates, from the high school person that's bagging your groceries to, the e-commerce associate that's shopping your order and putting it in your trunk, to our warehouse, everybody, all the way up to the CFO. We put them through a self-leadership course. There's a series of leadership courses, and everybody goes through self-leadership, because our thing is everybody needs to be a self-leader to be a good Heinen's associate. And it really is how to be a leader at work and outside of work. They learn how to set goals. They learn how to have conversations with managers, how to have conversations with customers if that's appropriate for their role, and lots of different things that we do that are things they can take with them wherever they go. So that was one of the things that really drew me to Heinen's. I felt like it really was an investment in every associate, not just people leaders or high potentials. And then we hold them to those standards. So. And
I actually was reading another article, which interests me on all of your perspectives, that there's been a shift that some people nowadays aren't all that interested in becoming managers. They just want to be high contributors in their area. And I think historically, the only way to get to a pay raise or get to that was you had to get to a supervisor and management position. So you take these people that were really good in their direct role, like a sales professional, and so they're the top seller, and then you make them a manager and they struggle in it, and it ends up forcing them out. So I'd be interested if you've seen a growth in, again, having those personal conversations, that someone's path isn't to management or leadership. So Tony, I don't know if you've got individual contributors that, hey, I'm happy, I just want to kind of define a role that's unique to me.
I mean, I have several employees that are, a lot of my employees have two jobs. And it's funny because they'll be in management at another location, and they'll come to my location or my business, and they just want to be a regular employee. They don't want the burden of stress of inventory, scheduling. They don't want those things. They just want to come and do a job and go home. So it's interesting to have that, but we do have, like I said, we have leadership programs within. If we don't have to go right from MSR to, front desk worker to management, we can give them a little bit at a time. We can give them what we call a shift lead. So we start small. We give them little duties and see how they perform with certain tasks, and then evaluate. And if you choose to grow, then you can grow from there.
Has the Cleveland Clinic invested in any positions that give somebody a little bit more status or higher pay that isn't always supervising people?
Yeah, it's been around for a while, all in complete transparency. There's a lot of team leads, assistant nurse managers, things of that nature. But every caregiver is different. So if they're in an individual contributor role and they choose to stay and want to grow and learn in there, everyone's got strong points and they want to learn more about that. So we do have learning and development, so they can take a class on whatever is important to them and they can contribute that way.
Yeah, our agency, the bulk of we have 500 staff, about half of them are support administrators. It's the case manager role. And one manager can supervise eight to 10 of them. So there wasn't a lot of room for growth, and they created what they just called SA2. So it was more of you're a little bit senior, you have some more experience, you've been identified as somebody that people can go to, but it doesn't require any direct supervision. You're not doing time cards, you're not doing performance evaluations. So it was a little bit of a title, a little bit more income, but not necessarily that burden of management and supervisor. So it just gave a little step up to add something to someone without like making them be a manager. If what they were good at is case management, now some of those skills would apply, but I think of other different roles of like, I take the best salesperson, I make them a manager, and they're a terrible manager. Or I take the best machine operator and I make them a supervisor, a floor lead, and they're not a good floor lead, right? So trying to think of ways to, and again, going back to that, having a personal conversation. What are your goals? What do you want?
And we do see that a lot in healthcare. You're a great nurse. We think you'd be a great manager, and sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. So I think that's why, we developed that assistant nurse manager. So it's kind of a good stepping stone, and then they can kind of choose their own path.
Thank you all for attending. Thanks to the great panelists.
This podcast was made possible with the support of our sponsors. Find more ways to grow at cuyeast.org.
Hey, if you like this episode, don't forget to comment, like, and share.